Paranormal experiences don't really work to a timescale, and therefore we invite you to listen to a dark minisode. Hello everyone and welcome back to the penultimate dark minisode of season 19. Now if you recall, we started Nikki's experience with one concise experience for the dark paranormal on Friday gone. And there were a few other experiences which didn't really fit that particular narrative but are terrifying in their own right, which we said we'd save for today's minisode. So, without any further ado, these are the remainder of Nikki's experiences. My boyfriend and I moved into a one-bedroom apartment in the Tenderloin district around 2006. It was a bright building that had been built right after the earthquake of 1906. We found that out later after things started happening. It was in the area that had been decimated by fires during that time. 100 years ago, people didn't know as much about earthquakes. So when the fires happened, city officials tried to use cannons to collapse burning buildings to prevent the spread. This only made the situation worse. Coupled with the damaged gas lines, the fire lasted 3 days. Nearly 500 blocks of San Francisco was rubble. The city is around 6 square miles, or 9.6 kilometers today. Half of its residents were displaced and 3,000 people died during that tragedy. We lived there together for 5 years. The first thing that happened to me was something I'd never encountered. It was the middle of the day. I was at home alone, sleeping in the long hallway that went from one end of the apartment to the other. It stopped at the kitchen, and from there you could see the white refrigerator and the microwave on top. Without thinking, I looked up to the microwave to see what time it was. Instead, I saw a blue, glowing ball. It was slightly smaller than the microwave and floating just in front of it. After a second, it darted out of sight into a smaller part of the kitchen. It wasn't scary. It was similar to when you startle an animal and it runs. I didn't understand what I saw. Still holding the broom, I repeated the motion to see if it was something I could recreate. But no. Now this will sound silly, but being confused as to what happened, I talked to the presence, thanking it for not trying to scare or hurt me. I asked it to forgive me for not understanding what I'm supposed to do right now. I even went on to say, I thought if you saw a ghost you would feel a chill down your spine or something. I guess that's not the case. I looked in the kitchen. Nothing was there now, and I went back to sweeping. Then, out of nowhere, I felt something behind me. And then I felt something I've never experienced. The hair on the back of my neck went up, and an energy went down my spine that gave it the sensation of being rattled. It's hard to describe. It was so strange. I felt like this spirit was trying to get my attention based on what I'd just said. I was more intrigued by this interaction. In the past, I'd mostly felt scared, but it didn't feel negative or heavy. My boyfriend also lived in the same haunted dorms as me in college. He'd had his own experiences there and didn't doubt me when I told him what happened in the hallway. We both hoped it wouldn't turn into a regular thing. Our landlady was very open-minded and kind, and after getting to know her better, I asked if the place had a history of being haunted, and I told her what happened to me. She told me that it was, but whatever was there seemed to kind of make the rounds, spending time in all of the apartments over the years, and that it had never been malicious. She told me about how one of my neighbours watched one of her heavy old school windows slowly open by itself and close. These were hard enough to open by yourself. Opening and closing on its own would have been out of the question. The neighbour freaked out and ran out of the apartment to get a neighbour to come and see. The strangest thing was that once back, with the neighbour, the spirit opened and closed the window again. They both ran, horrified, and found Lani, our landlady. Years went by and nothing really happened. Then one morning, my boyfriend and I woke up, and it was already light outside. I'd been sleeping with my back to him, and I looked over, and there was a red handprint on the upper part of his chest. He hadn't mentioned it when he went to bed. It was smooth. It looked like a crisp indentation. I mentioned it to him, and he was surprised too. We both thought it might have been from my hand, though that had never happened. So I put my hand up to make sense of it. But this handprint was significantly smaller than my hand, so it couldn't have been from me. At this point, he went to the bathroom to get a better look in the mirror. While in front of the mirror, he watched it disappear in less than a minute. He came back and it was completely gone. It didn't make any sense at all. Imagine when you've got a deep line on your face from a pillow. Now imagine that making the outline of a hand, which is red on the inside. Well, that's what it was. Nothing like that happened again. Sadly, we broke up. I moved out. We remained friends. After I was gone, he said the activity picked up. He had a couple of unnerving experiences where he'd awoken to the feeling of someone holding him. And there would be a small human-shaped indentation in the bed next to him. There were also many unexplained noises coming from the closet and things disappearing, then reappearing in a place they definitely weren't left. Things dropping where it made no sense for them to drop. While living in San Francisco, I learned from talking to friends about the paranormal, that it's really common there. Almost everyone who can pick up on it has a story, especially from that part of the city. And that was Nikki's first experience for today before we move on to our next one. But what is very interesting is the sort of phenomena she describes. Things dropping out of seemingly thin air is known as an apport. And as sort of paranormal trends move and change throughout the eras, apports are much less reported these days, but were at their peak at the turn of the 20th century during seances, especially in places like New York and England. One of the most common apports would be a coin, which would be dated from maybe 100 years prior, which would just land with a clatter on the table where the seance was performed. Now, what's fascinating for me is I'm unaware of Nikki's knowledge of apports or of Victorian-style seances, so it's always amazing to me if someone starts to describe something they potentially previously had no knowledge of, as an activity of the paranormal. But we'll move on to Nikki's second experience. In the early noughties, I got a job making arty displays and window dressing for a store in an affluent area. It was located a little downtown that had been built in the 1800s. It was a large boutique that sold clothes and home items. My co-workers were all cool. The merchandiser, Harrison, and I became good friends. Our jobs overlapped, so we had a lot in common. He and I both started at 7 a.m. every day. A couple of months into working together, one morning I noticed what smelt like a dead animal. It was really unexpected considering the store was 30% candles, which were all very perfumey. Being grossed out at the thought of a dead mouse, I called out to Harrison, who was only a few feet away. "Oh, there's a dead mouse or something over here. It smells really bad." As he walked over, he said, "That's not a mouse. That's our ghost." Then he got loud and dramatic, which was his sense of humour that we all loved. "The ghost is so nasty. They need to clean themselves up. This is disgusting. Just go already." Looking back, I realised this poor spirit could have been reliving their death, or stuck in their death state, and that the smell could have been just them trying to get our help, or something they couldn't do themselves. It didn't feel heavy or negative. It just smelt like death. And there was no plumbing that could have caused it. In the moment, though, it was the first time I saw someone comfortable and not give a flying F about the paranormal and just treat it like a normal, annoying thing. It was refreshing. Our friend, Jet, who was opening the registers, chimed in too. "No, the ghost is back. Go away." A week or two after being there, when my friends made fun of the ghost, I needed to use an opaque projector for a spring window display. The panels were really big, and the only place I could set up was at the bottom of the stairs near the basement. Now, nothing really felt off. I set up my work area and had a radio going. It was a nice day. Then I heard something at the top of the stairs. I looked up, and I could see the cinder block that I put securely in front of the door was slowly sliding back. Not out in the direction when a heavy door pushes something, in the direction the door wants to close, but the opposite, straight back. I watched with dread. Yep, that cinder block slid from in front of the door to past it, and then the door slammed shut with me still at the bottom of the stairs. Did I mention the light switches were at the top of the stairs? They were conveniently next to the door, which meant that now I had to walk up the stairs with only the glow of the projector behind me. It was getting darker with every step, and I was horrified, because this spirit was strong enough to push a heavy cinder block. That seemed like a big show of power. I mean, what else could it do? I thought to myself in between a stream of swear words. I was so uncomfortable. I got to the top of the stairs, and there was a really angry, heavy feeling. My heart was pounding. I was relieved that the door actually opened, and I ran to the manager's office to tell my friends what happened. I felt that was this way's spirit of teaching me a lesson for being so disrespectful. Let's take a quick break to tell you about a wonderful product. Did you know there are more than 1,000 hormone disruptors living rent-free in our world? From the food we eat to the air we breathe, even the skincare we use. They could be messing with your hormones and making you feel like you're stuck in a mystery of your own. And just like a plot twist in a true crime story or one of those unexpected scary moments in our submitters' experiences, hormonal changes like premenopause or menopause can strike at the most unexpected times. And suddenly you're dealing with mood swings, sleepless nights, and all those other symptoms that make you feel like you're losing control. But here's the good news. This is one mystery you can solve with Happy Mammoth. Just take the 2-minute free quiz from Happy Mammoth, answer a few simple questions about what you're experiencing and where you're at in life, and you'll uncover the real culprit behind your hormonal symptoms. And the best part? After taking the quiz, you'll get a personalized recommendation to help you balance your hormones so you can feel like yourself again. The results are impressive. There are over 40,000 reviews on their website. Women cannot stop talking about it on social media. A bottle of Hormone Harmony is sold every 24 seconds. According to a survey, 86% of the women started losing weight, 77% say it improved their mood, and the biggest benefit? 100% of the women surveyed said they're feeling like themselves again. For a limited time, you can get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com. Just use the code DARKParanormal at checkout. That's happymammoth.com and use the code DARKParanormal for 15% off today. Evidently, that store had made everyone that worked there a while very aware of ghosts. Stevie, the head manager, believed me and never made me work in that basement again in the dark without Harrison. I was still really shook up. They told me all about the stuff that happened to them, about how the ghost would do all kinds of things that made it harder, especially for the managers. Every night, whoever was closing would have to check that all the interior doors were locked in the back area, then set the back alarm, and then once in the main area, lock all the doors there and set the alarm there as well. Then lock the front door before leaving. It was a newer alarm system that was maintained. At least once every couple of months, the head manager would get a call, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 a.m., from the security company that there was a door that opened at the store. Then one of the managers would have to come in and lock up the building again. The building was a little creepy in the morning, but nothing that bad because there were other people there. But imagine having to come in at 3 a.m., surrounded by no one, totally alone. It's terrible. Everyone I worked with had a story of how they knew they locked everything, otherwise the alarm wouldn't arm properly. Then having to come in at 1 a.m. to find the doors inside open. Mainly the door that led to the storage area in the basement. None of the doors outside were unlocked, only doors on the inside. One of the scariest accounts of these was Stevie's, who got a call on New Year's Eve after she'd gotten home around 2, that there was a door open at the store. When she got there, all of the ceiling lights in the main part of the store was swinging for no reason, causing the light in the store to be especially creepy. She was freaking out because she had to walk past all of those lights to get to the door that was always open, the basement. When she unlocked the door to the back, there was the basement door, unlocked and open, propped open with that cinder block. She locked up and ran out. I worked there for 3 years. Most of my friends were there during that time too. We found out from friends in the neighbouring stores that a lot of them had ghosts too. There was an optometrist across the street, and the woman at the counter said that she would see a little boy in 1920s clothes peek around the counter at her. We also found out that all of the basements in this little downtown street used to be interconnected. During the 20s, this basement network used to be a spot for gambling, boxing, drinking, and other illegal entertainment for the mob. This town had lakes and was about 30 minutes outside the major city. We also found out that back in the day, mobsters looking to avoid the cops in the city would come out here and hide or take a mini vacation. Today, it's a very prim and proper town. Most of those shoppers have no idea what's right next to them. That store is still there, and when I go home, I like to go in and ask them if the ghost is still there. Well, I hope that when you do ask that question, you're given the answer in the affirmative, because that sounds like a truly terrifying ordeal. One thing I can relate to is my brother-in-law was a security guard / caretaker for a school in a town nearby. Now, this school had been there or has been there since the 1600s, and it's been modernised throughout the years, but at this particular time, around the year 2000, part of the school was modernised, and the remaining half of the school was the original building. And, similar to what you're saying about the security guards and the alarm system, he would often be called out around 2 or 3 a.m. to be met with a police officer who would guide him to the security hut, and they would notice together which light had been set off or which alarm had been triggered. And it was always the same room in this older part of the building. And they kind of made a joke of it, knowing which room it would be. My brother-in-law said, the thing is, you couldn't trigger that alarm without triggering one of the 2 doors of the corridor which led to that particular room. So both he and the police officer would laugh and joke and obviously be terrified and take turns to go and turn off and reset that alarm. whilst the other would watch on the monitor to make sure the alarm was indeed reset. Now, my brother-in-law can rationalise these things very simply, but I know from how he tells the story, he was never comfortable, and I think he convinced himself that it was a rational fault, as opposed to something or someone haunting a 1600 AD school. And of course, using Occam's razor, what's more likely, a loose wire in an alarm, or somebody coming back from the dead to haunt a particular room in a school? Well, if that question was posited to me, genuinely, I would find both answers equally viable. But maybe because I'm more of a believer than the average person. But thank you, Nikki, for providing us both with a Dark Paranormal episode and this week's penultimate minisode. Yes, there are 3 other shorter experiences which form about a paragraph each that we will include on this week's Dark Bites, but sincerely thank you for the content and for the amazing stories therein. And I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me on your show here today. And don't forget to tune in this week on Friday for the penultimate episode of the Dark Paranormal Season 19. And until then, stay safe and take care.